During the Corbyn years that I referenced earlier, it was not uncommon for the media to print utterly erratic and bizarre fan fictions about how Corbyn would destroy the country if he ever got into power. Quite often these were printed in the Daily Mail, which is among Britain's least factually accurate newspapers. It might even be Britain's most factually inaccurate newspaper. This week, the Daily Mail decided to do a new version of this, especially tailored and giving the same treatment to one Zach Polanski. Greens plan to hand illegal migrants free house, a wage, and NHS care. And this article is written by Sarah Vine, who is former Conservative Minister Michael Gove's ex-wife. Small world after all, isn't it? Especially if you work in politics or mainstream media. And they gave it the fantastic subtitle, and one that I think we should all be adopting: Beware the Green Menace. I think we should all be adopting this and start using this whenever they try to pile the uniparty shit onto us, or whenever anybody is being a bit too skeptical about the chances for progressivism in this country. Beware the Green Menace. Nigel Farage has a new plan for mass deportations. Excuse me. I forgot why I put that in there. I was saying Nigel Farage has a new plan for mass deportations. Well, beware the Green Menace. It's coming for reform too. That was what I meant to say there. Excuse me. Sometimes I write things in the script and then I'm like, what did I mean by that? I've no idea. I have as much idea as you did. Sorry. In the article, Sarah Vine writes, illegal migrants would be given a free house and paid a wage with no requirement to work under the Green Party's immigration policy. Zach Polanski plans to let arrivals use the NHS for free the moment they enter Britain. Not people, by the way, arrivals. And they will be allowed to work with no restrictions under plans for a world without borders. I'm talking like this because I presume that's how Sarah Vine talks. So first of all, she's almost certainly referring to asylum seekers who aren't illegal migrants. Seeking asylum is legal, and you can't be penalised for your method of entry under Article 31 of the 1951 Refugee Convention, right? It makes your method of entry retrospectively legal. Like the Illegal Migration Act of 2023 made it a crime to travel to the UK via small boat, but this doesn't override the protections given to asylum seekers. So it's still legal to come via small boat and then claim asylum. They're not illegal migrants. Okay, secondly, yes, you shouldn't starve refugees. I can't believe I have to say that, but okay, that's counterproductive for everyone because you don't want desperate people with no money in your local area for gangs to exploit, whether they work or not. It's in your self-interest to make sure that they have the basics of life. And thirdly, up until the early 2000s, asylum seekers were allowed to work while they waited for their asylum claim to be processed. Since then, we've just banned them from working at all. They just have to sit there and wait, right? Some of them volunteer with charities and youth groups, and that is really great, but really they should be given the right to work. I actually met a doctor from Kabul a few years ago who was researching UK medicine regulations to try and educate himself. He'd practiced as a GP in Kabul for 10 years, I think it was, and now he's now being made, or was then being made, to sit and wait, right? He'd been in the UK for 2 years when I met him, waiting for his asylum claim to be heard. How wild is that? We have a shortage of NHS doctors, and he was just being made to sit and wait instead of working to benefit the community in the UK, to benefit everybody in the UK. A fully trained doctor who would need adjustments, but it would be cheaper than training a new doctor from scratch. So in summary, they'd be given free accommodation, which they already get, money to live on, which they already get, NHS access, which they already get. The only difference is that they would be allowed to work under the Greens. It's wild to paint that as a bad thing. We don't want them to be dependent upon the state, right? Sarah Vine goes on. Under the Greens' premiership, all illegal migrants would be handed a wage at the level of universal basic income with no requirement to be either working or actively seeking work. Migrant families would be accommodated in a house or flat with exclusive use, and lone men would each have their own room in shared accommodation. So they wouldn't be living below the breadline, which means less poverty and less crime. They've already given they're already given a wage without a requirement to work. So the difference is that the Greens would just let them work and build flats and houses for their use. Building flats and houses for their use is a good thing. We need cheap, good quality flats that are owned by local authorities, right? Those flats can also be used to increase the social housing supply when they're not in use. And the Greens do already have a plan to build council housing for Brits. They want to massively increase the number of council houses, so reducing the cost of rent in the private market. Rent is absolutely horrendous in this country. If they have their own accommodation, then they're not in hotels, army barracks, or getting accused of stealing houses off British people, right? The Daily Mail then whines about the Greens' drug policy for a bit, but we've kind of already covered that, so I want to go on to the next bit. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail revealed yesterday that policy states sex work should be decriminalised and restrictions placed on sexually explicit material ended, except for those aimed at protecting children. The decriminalisation of sex work is the norm for international advocacy groups who care about sex workers' rights. Violence against sex work is so often a result of its criminalisation. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the World Health Organization, the UN, and the Global Alliance Against Trafficking in Women all support decriminalisation because it keeps sex workers safer. The Christchurch School of Medicine also found that New Zealand saw no increase in the number of sex workers, but a dramatic increase in their safety after decriminalisation took place in, I think it was 2007 or 2009 in New Zealand. So it's the common sense position, right? And an end to restrictions placed on sexually explicit material, like that phrasing would worry me, but this is the Daily Mail paraphrasing, so I'm almost certain that proper ethical considerations would be taken, not just release any and all sexually explicit material. So those are their main arguments, which mostly boils down to, and when I say there, I should be clear. So those are Sarah Vine's main arguments, the Daily Mail's main arguments, which mostly boils down to some good proposals, but 90% things we already do. Other than that, it's incredibly dramatic stuff that makes the Greens sound so much cooler than they actually are, right? This is how it ends. The days when the Green Party was populated by harmless eccentrics are a distant memory. In its current guise, the party has emerged as a ruthless political machine, willing to hitch its mast to unpalatable causes to increase its profile. It goes without saying that these proposals haven't been even slightly thought out. Most of them we already do, Sarah, you muppet. And in the normal course of events could be dismissed as a joke. But in a nightmare post-election scenario where the Greens ended up sharing power in a left-wing coalition with Labour and the Lib Dems, it wouldn't be left-wing if the Labour and the Lib Dems were in it, they would be no laughing matter at all. No laughing matter at all. Banseka, they're shitting themselves, aren't they? Like, they are actually shitting themselves. Like, what did you make of some of the attack lines there?
Yeah, we're on like full-on mass hysteria now. It's weirdly nostalgic, you know, taking us back to 2017 to 2019 sort of era. Yeah, Zach Palancy, he's getting the Jeremy Corbyn treatment, for sure. There's no doubt about that. I think he's dealing with it really well. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's way of dealing with it, like, in a weird way, I think Jeremy Corbyn in many ways is very resilient, because I think personally, if I went through what he went through, particularly around the anti-Semitism stuff, which I think was the stuff that really kind of damaged him the most, the smears that damaged him the most. I suppose Zach Palanski, it feels bad to say this, but obviously as the man is Jewish, maybe it's also slightly easier for him to deal with that, although I still think he's had some horrendous stuff flung his way and insinuations that he's not really Jewish because he doesn't ascribe to Zionism and that type of stuff. But, you know, Jeremy Corbyn was kind of weirdly resilient, but he was also kind of prickly at the same time. You know, you could tell that sometimes he was like, oh, fuck this. Zach Palanski, I think, deals with it very well. I don't know if that's because it's probably just part of his natural disposition. He's a bit of a performer at heart as well. And, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's not naturally like that, you know. So I think he's dealing with it really well, but it's full on like mass hysteria for sure. That can only be a compliment. It means you are posing some kind of a threat. It means that you are posing some kind of a material threat to these people and their interests, and their interests lie with the very wealthy, the very rich. Their interests aren't, of course, with the working class. So, you know, I actually saw someone on Twitter. I can't remember who it was or if you saw it, actually threatened people today if anyone was tempted to vote for the Green Party. They're like, if you vote for the Green Party in that by-election, like I'm coming for you. And it's like, bloody hell, like you people have lost your goddamn minds, man. I mean, like, can't we just have a little bit of something nice? No.
Honestly, like that hysteria has reached new levels, like particularly recently. But like just focusing down on that article for a second,
Yeah.
do you find it strange that they're fear mongering about stuff that like already happens? Like we already have. Asylum seekers, they already have the right to medical care, to food, to shelter under international law. And we already do give them these things. The only like new thing that the Greens would be giving them here, they would be improving those things for sure. But like the only new thing that they're being given here in terms of the asylum seekers is that they would get they would get the right to work, which surely like that's unburdening the taxpayer. Like, why are the Daily Mail acting like this is scary? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just such a confusing bunch of contradictions because I think they've always got to find a way to do this like reveal, like, aha, well actually this would be this and this is gonna be even worse, or here's how it's even more stacked against you and pro migrant. And they can't really make up their minds. It's like you hate the hotels. Okay. To be honest with you, I personally don't like the fact that we've got asylum seekers in those hotels. I actually don't think they're great environments for anyone to be in. You also don't want houses. You don't want them to live in anything. Uh, so you don't want hotels. You don't want houses. You also want them to work and pay their way, but then you also don't want them to work at all. And then you also don't want them to use our services, even though they might be then working already and paying into those services. So it's just this kind of constant moving of the goalposts. It's this constant changing of the target. It's a moving target all the time, and it's totally nonsensical. She's kind of raging in that article about a world without borders, which normally, obviously, when we hear that phrase, it's normally like it's something really inspirational, like, oh yeah, a world without borders. But is she not happy for wealthy people to live in a world without borders? That's how they live. Jim Ratcliffe, he can go wherever he wants. He can live wherever he wants. He can leave and decide not to pay tax in the country where he does most of his business, apparently, if he wants to. So there's kind of this full freedom for him to move wherever he wants. This kind of real, I guess, like neoliberal contradiction that's always been there, right? Yeah, we want freedom of movement for trade, we want freedom of movement for services, goods, but we do not want those lower class, underclass people, often coded, of course, as black and brown. We don't want those people to move anywhere. No, those people that have freedom, because that would be bad. Suddenly, then that is then bad when those people move across borders as opposed to wealthy people and goods and services, right? So it's just this kind of horrible contradiction of things that's just really coming to a head because I think they can see that Zach Polanski is a threat. The polling numbers of Zach, we've talked about this many times. I hope people aren't getting sick of it. The polling numbers of the Green Party, it's really impressive what he's managed to do. He's not been leader that long, It's really impressive how they've managed to really, get get themselves going. I think Hannah in the Gorton and Denton constituency is a really impressive candidate. I really hope that she wins. But yeah, they're absolutely a threat, and so this kind of mass contradictory hysteria is obviously a response to that. I also completely agree about the whole stuff around housing as well, and that the Greens clearly have policies around expansion of social housing. I don't think migration is the main problem that we have with housing in this country. There's huge problems to do with the private rented sector, shrinking home ownership, all of that stuff as well. Not enough council houses won't replace, and all of that. And the Greens have got policies that, a holistic set of policies, if you like. With reform, they're basically just telling us, well, we'll fix this one thing, i.e. migration, and then everything will kind of just fall into place. And no one ever really seems to ask them. If I'm ever on a panel with a Reform Party person, I want to really ask them, what is the big picture? Because you cannot sit there and be serious and seriously tell us you're going to fix this one thing, this one problem, and then magically everything's just going to be all calm and great and gravy again. It's not going to be. They don't have a holistic package of things. They've actually got a wildly contradictory set of policies, I think. You can't be migrants coming here, but at the same time you're very pro creating asylum seekers with Israel's bombing and genocide in Gaza, for example. So I think the Green Party, they've got a really nice kind of holistic set of policies together. Last thing I'll say really quickly as well, because you mentioned sex work, I think it's really important, and I agree with you that most sort of mainstream women's rights charities, want to support sex workers. Again, like the likes of Sarah Vine and the Daily Mail, probably cosplayers giving a shit about workers. I guess that doesn't include maybe sex workers. But it's a really important issue. We need to include them when we think about workers' rights. And I think it's a bigger thing when we think about like the OnlyFans-ification of sex work, right? And the scope that there is now actually for sex workers to be exploited is actually massive. And one takeaway that I had from that awful Bonnie Blue documentary on Channel 4, don't know if anyone watched it last year, but one takeaway that I had from that for sex workers was, I want to know more about the sex workers who are exploited. I don't want to hear about the multi-millionaire fucking top 1% of OnlyFans creators. I want to know more about your average, sex worker on OnlyFans, which can include some very young people who, end up maybe doing things that they don't want to do, end up being exploited by bigger OnlyFans creators like the likes of Bonnie Blue. There's a lot there, I think, for us to consider with this collision of sex work and the online world now. So entirely sensible stuff, and it's just unserious, all this scaremongering.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before, but like democracy in the workplace can give us power over AI. It can also give sex workers the power over institutions like OnlyFans, so that OnlyFans don't have all of the power in that relationship, and they can start to claim some of that power back. And indeed, it makes like pimping and stuff harder, because it means that it means that consent always has to play a role in it, and control over these different ideas and sex workers' rights always have to play a role. The English Collective of Prostitutes is I think the sex workers union here in the UK. Really worth checking out some of the stuff they do and the advocacy they do, because like you say, legalization is the not legalization, decriminalization. There's a distinction. Legalization can mean the Nordic model, and you don't want the Nordic model. You want decriminalization, because there's massive problems with the Nordic model as well. But away from the sex work stuff, with regards to borders and the idea of open borders, I do get a little bit frustrated with reform saying that, you want open borders, because I'm not actually campaigning for open borders. Like the Greens might say that that's a long-term goal, right? But it's a bit like me turning around to them and going, you want child murder because you support raising getting rid of reinstating the 2-child benefit cap, right? So you support murdering little kids because you it's like there's a massive extrapolation going on there to the most extreme position. Now I might think that about reform. I do think about that about some of reformist politicians, but like I feel like framing the debate in that way, if I was on TV, would be dishonest. I wouldn't like start by saying that their policy of the 2-child benefit cap murders. Like that wouldn't be how I would approach it. And I feel like they could do us the same courtesy. There's a big distinction as well between open borders and which is not generally something I support, and the idea of free borders, of soft borders, right? The idea that there's a soft border, like Northern Ireland would be an example of a soft border. Like there are border checks, and that there's checks for things like to make sure that people aren't bringing weapons in, but people should be able to freely come and go. Like people should be able to freely come and go. It's the free movement of people that we're concerned with, whereas like I feel like the capitalist class is primarily concerned with the free movement of goods. Did you have anything to say on that?
No, I completely agree with that. Classic neoliberal contradiction that, in my opinion, they were never able to explain. They were never able to explain when suddenly it was about people, especially black and brown people. It's like, can't have them doing that.
literally like it's honestly, it's so true, and it's so targeted at people from the global south as well. Like just all of these restrictions, the way that everything's framed. Do you remember the Breaking Points poster from was it Breaking Point?
Yeah, Britain is at breaking point. Yeah, I remember
that's that. The one. Yes, yeah, and it was like it was like a big queue of brown people, and it's like, mate, the people from the European Union, this was during the referendum campaign, the majority of immigrants from the European Union are from places like Poland. They're not primarily, but it's that association between scaremongering about immigration and the like inherent like underlying racism directed towards black and brown people.